Welcome to the Causenetic podcast.
This podcast amplifies the topics you want to hear about.
Causenetic means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
Globally minded and locally focused.
I'm Rodrigo Ross.
I'm Keith Benson.
So today we are talking about Because I Am. The idea around social determinants and other social factors that weigh in on a person's ability to thrive. And this is another installation in our Causenetic leadership series where we're amplifying leaders and initiatives that are dynamic and energizing. So today's guest is the one and only.
The one and only.
I'm going to have so much fun today. Jerry Hawkins, who is the executive director of the Dallas Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, which is part of a 14-city initiative with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. He's also a Presidential Leadership Scholar Fellow and a Leader Arts Institute Fellow. He's a lot of fellows, right? And he's a trustee appointed member of the Dallas ISD's Racial Equity Advisory Council and the Dallas County Historical Commission member. That was a mouthful. You got to stop working so hard, Jerry. Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's Presidential Leadership Scholar Fellow. Man, that's huge. You just recently got that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a collaboration of four presidential foundations and presidential libraries. So 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, LBJ and Clinton, and both Bushes. And they wanted to come together to talk about bipartisan leadership and really just to build a group of alumni who will support each other in their work. And that really is the goal. The alumni there, or even the people in the room, are amazing. They're doing amazing work. It's got folks who are doing surgery in Rwanda folks who are like building new patents for stay-at-home moms. Like they got this amazing group of people. So the room is the real power. So so I'm excited to be part of that group.
And I know you had to have a particular project in order to get in there. Tell us a little bit about your project.
Yeah, so my project is my new organization. It's called Imagining Freedom Institute, or the Institute for Imagining Freedom. With my partners, Amber Sim and Robbie Esteban, we have a program called Young Leader Strong City where we do racial equity summits for high school students. We have a contract with Richardson ISD and Dallas ISD, so we do about 4 of those summits every year with those partners, and then we do one by ourselves. But we're also doing projects. A project coming up actually Saturday is we've been hired by a group that wants to talk about tearing down 345, the highway that connects 75 and 45. And our role is to tell about the history of the 3 freedmen's towns underneath this highway. And
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so obviously after the Civil War and Reconstruction, this amazing feat happened. Black folks who were formerly enslaved worked very hard, sharecropping, and saved enough money to buy almost 25% of Dallas. It's an amazing feat. And so in the central part of the city, there was Freedmanstown, which some people know as Short North Dallas, some people know as State Thomas, and was connected by another Freedmanstown, like a strip called Stringtown. And Stringtown connected Deep Ellum. So these are all very important Black places where folks lived, worked, played, and produced and created wonderful art and music. During the era of slum clearance, most Black and brown communities were targeted in most major cities for highway construction. And of course, we see what happened to the Black community here. 75, Woodall Rogers, 30, and 345 especially rammed right over that community, 3 communities to be exact, particularly when it was about race, and literally destroyed the fabric of the neighborhoods.
And what you're talking about is right there where the Moreland YMCA.
That's right.
Used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, the Moreland YMCA was the place that people came, when we couldn't stay in the hotels, people stayed at the YMCA.
That's right. It's a really important place in our city. I don't think folks understand the real importance of Moreland Y. I think I talked to Rodrigo about this earlier, but in a very segregated place, particularly during like Jim Crow era, where folks literally like their existence meant danger to them. It served as a safer space because I don't really believe in safe space. spaces,
Right.
but it served as a safer space for folks to stay, enjoy themselves, to talk. I mean, the who's who of people in America, Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King, stayed
Ernie
in the
Banks.
Moreland Y.
Yeah.
You know, Ernie Banks, you know, from Chicago, but, you know, I'm a White Sox fan. But shout out Ernie Banks, Mr. Cuz.
That's right. So in the Washington Post, a journalist, Tracy Jan, wrote an article talking about racial discrimination in mortgage lending, this whole idea around redlining, and the fact that even though it was criminalized or it became illegal almost 80 years ago, those very same communities still struggle economically, and that's where you kind of see most of the blight, which sounds really familiar, right, to this concept of they built these highways, they broke up freedmen towns and stuff. So talk to us about, I know you worked really heavy with this redlining project here in Dallas. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so, you know, I did work closely in the beginning, but I had serious problems with the city of Dallas doing a redlining project.
Okay.
Number one, because redlining is obviously a federal policy in the 1930s and 40s, started there from the Homeowners Loan Corporation that basically created the white middle class. Black people were excluded from their wealth building because it was based on home ownership. And so in redlining, they would basically draw maps and color them. Red, yellow, green, and blue. Those red areas were areas where black people lived, and they were not allowed to own, they were not allowed to have access to federally backed mortgages, which is how the bank did mortgages back then. So imagine literally decades of not being able to have access to the wealth, the number one wealth building strategy in America, right?
Home ownership.
Right, home ownership.
Right.
It's really interesting too because Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote an article called Case for Reparations. It's one of the most famous recent magazine articles. It's the first magazine article I saw that a company did a YouTube video for. He also won the MacArthur Genius Award for it. Have you all seen Watchmen?
No.
So if you've seen Watchmen on HBO, the showrunner, Damon Lindelof, he actually created Watchmen and used Tulsa, the race massacre, because he read the Case for Reparations. Right? So it's a powerful essay. It's about 30 pages long, one of the longest magazine essays I've ever read. But it's an important thing. It's about qualifying this one policy. It wasn't about slavery. It was about contract lending, which happens in a red line situation, right? Because folks couldn't have access to home ownership, so they literally had to buy or rent to own homes from white buyers who would come in and sell homes for twice the value.
Oh, wow.
The interesting part about that is that the social equity group at Duke recently quantified this qualified essay, right? And so they found out just from this one policy, contract lending, from 1950 to 1970, that the black community in Chicago lost $3 to $4 billion in wealth just in 20 years.
In one
for
community.
one policy.
Wow.
Right? We ain't talking about red line. We're just talking about contract lending, right? So just imagine all of the work that we have to do to even figure out what happened to us, the harm that's been caused by that policy.
Man, that was heavy, what you just said, in terms of that amount of money that was lost. Like, what do you think are some things that we need to do today to, we can't get that back, but to move
We can,
move
actually.
forward?
Okay.
And I say that because there's been, particularly in Dallas, there's been local reparations ordinance that we don't view as reparations ordinances. So one I always talk about is Trinity River Audubon Center.
Okay.
If you've ever been there, you know that it's a beautiful place. It's a nature preserve. But the real story is what happened in 1982, or actually what happened in the 70s. So it used to be a white community in Pleasant Grove. During that period of time, because of school desegregation, a white flight happened, and folks started to move to the suburbs and to the north part of the city. And so that community became a black neighborhood because black people were looking for existing housing stock that could be affordable. And right when that happened, the city tried to change zoning around this residential community. They wanted to change that zoning to business, and so they allowed illegal dumping to happen there from 1982 to 2000.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't just illegal dumping. It was the largest illegal dump in Texas history, right? But from the beginning, those residents protested. They went to city council. They filed injunctions, and they finally had to get a lawyer, Daniel and Pashira, local lawyers who do civil rights cases here, and they won. They beat the city.
Oh, wow.
The reparations for that was the city had to build a landfill over that largest illegal dump in Texas history, and build this nature preserve. Everybody in zip code 75217 can go there for free. You think they know about it now? If you've ever been there, you know they don't know about it because is weddings happen there, is folks that, it's very homogeneous setting. There's a highway, right? Great Trinity River Forest Way, no sidewalks. So, I mean, that's another part. It is hidden back there, but it belongs to the community by city ordinance,
Oh, wow.
So we got to get more people out talking about those type of things. What other changes do you see? I mean, there's a lot going on in Dallas. I would say when I came here 10 and a half years ago, what I understood was, what I didn't know at first was how divided Dallas is. There's truly, here's the north side and here's the south side. And so I look at it from a resource standpoint. What brought it to my attention was I need to go to urgent, not the urgent care, but the CVS, the center that they have in there, and just had a cold or something. And I Googled and looked up, and there was not one on the south side of Dallas. But when I looked at the map, it was just this clear line, and speckles are everywhere for where they were on the north side. And that just, for me, that was my first indication of, wow, this is truly divided. I mean, how do we continue to close that gap?
Yeah, so that's a big story, and I think it takes a lot of work. Number one, I do want to say that things are moving in a very positive way. I would think, like, I moved to Dallas maybe almost 9 years ago at a time. When I started talking about racial equity, I could have been an alien because people were looking at me like I was crazy.
What?
They was like, "What you talking about?"
What?
Now, because of my help and other folks' help, our school district has a racial equity office with $7 to $8 million in their budget. We still pushing because they ain't doing everything they need to be doing, but it's there. Our city now has an equity office, right? Fort Worth ISD now has an equity office, right? Richardson now has an equity office. These things weren't even existing 2 years ago, right? So I think those are really positive steps. Dallas TRHT is here now with outside funding from a funder, which means we can do the work that we need to do without obstruction, right? But that also means that folks are now paying attention. They're now like, we got to do something different now. Like this, bringing national attention to our city. We can't operate the same way we did. And Dallas is also a very, very unique city in that it is a young city, right? It is like 160 plus years old, but it has had everything that happened in American history happen to it, right? We're talking about native removal and genocide, their land stolen, slavery for at least 10 to 12 years, and then this period of sharecropping, right, where Dallas became the largest inland port for cotton in the world after 1900. This ain't during slavery, right? So imagine,
Wow.
So one of my favorite things, I always love talking to Jerry because I feel like, oh my gosh, I went through all of these years to school, went to an HBCU, and he's still dropping knowledge. Like, I always learn something. Oh my God. But one of my most favorite things to hear him talk about is this idea of a dog whistle, right? And so I was talking to someone before, and I kind of used it, and I felt real fancy because, he had learned me a thing or two. So I'm using it in a conversation, and they're looking at me like, what is a dog whistle? I was like, oh, you got to talk to Jerry because I can't do it justice. So talk to us about this idea of dog whistle.
It sounds real different, too, for Rodrigo because she got that jersey. You know what I'm saying? So
that New York, it's real heavy today.
You feel me?
Yeah.
The East Coast. So, like dog whistles are messages or language that really stem from folks who are like right-leaning or very ultra-conservative. And these are words or proxy words that really signal like racism or it's like sexism, some type of issue of hate, right? And you can hear it by like language that's being used. So someone might say like these people are like infested, like how the current administration talked about Baltimore, right? But that language is an old language, right? That's same language that Hitler used in Nazi Germany, and the same language that cities used in the redlining document in 1937 to describe communities of color and why they didn't deserve mortgages, right? So it's an old language, and it's like really bringing that thing up to really dehumanize people, right? And the same language is being used for immigrants, for now different people countries, because now like that SO countries, right? Or go back to your home country when folks have been here longer than them. You know, it's really interesting. Language that a lot of people, if you don't understand race, is very hard to decode, you know?
Yeah, so one of the examples that I heard kind of in modern day language is when you hear speech or rhetoric around welfare reform or inner cities, right? Like what images do those conjure? What do people automatically assume when you use those buzzwords? And many times, unfortunately, it's correlated to people of color or people who are poor without necessarily saying it that way and being quote unquote politically incorrect. You kind of throw these triggers in your speech that could really have negative effects.
So you talk a little bit about the foundation, what Kellogg Foundation is doing around the country in these 14 cities. I mean, what is the impact that is being made with the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so Kellogg Foundation is giving the funding and some support, but it's really the power of the work is really located in the local community. It's a community convening to help local folks have resources to do this type of work. And so I think that it has had a really large effect. Remember, it's like not necessarily 14 cities, but 13 cities and 14 places. So the other places, the whole state of Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And we created like a national consortium. We've partnered on things. I actually have been to Alaska 3 times just for this, just because I'm in this work.
Oh, you need some help next time?
I have never been to Alaska ever in my life. And Alaska is an amazing place.
Next time?
Like if
you need to go there.
Yeah. So
what kind of shoes can I buy in Alaska?
You can buy anything.
That's what I'm talking
Anchorage
about,
is a big city, but I'm just saying
That's
like
what I'm talking about.
It is an amazing place.
I need some shoes, some Alaskan shoes. I do.
The biggest thing is that we are able to support each other in the work, travel, see what's happening, and then do some really, creative stuff together.
We got the amazing Jerry Hawkins with us on the Causenetic podcast today, and the impact of what his organization is doing and what he's doing personally, and just the recognition that you've been having all around the country. Man, this has been an incredible conversation. Where can people find out more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so please go to our website, DallasTRHT.org. We have tons of resources on there. If you go on our resource tab, we have videos of Dallas history. We have our reports up there. We started to do reports about Dallas history and our community conversations we've been having. Follow us on social media at DallasTRHT on Twitter and Instagram. You can see us, sharing resources and sharing the events. Also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the IF Institute. The IF Institute is where we're doing like these really cool social projects in Young Leader Strong City. And yeah, we around. I also started a new book club too for folks who want to do some learning. It's called Bailout Book Club. Follow us on Bailout Book Club IG. We read The Accommodation, which is the first book written about Dallas and race in the 80s. And now we're reading the 1619 Project.
Nice.
So yeah, follow us.
Check out the 1619 podcast.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to bring the creator of the 1619 Project here in May for our event. So look out for that.
Excellent,
right.
excellent. Thank you. You
really.
Guys, I'm telling you, if you ever hear about Jerry and he's going to be somewhere speaking, get yourself there. Get there.
Doing, I think, some really Causenetic type of work. That phenomenon that is happening all throughout Dallas and throughout the country. Thank you for listening to the Causenetic,
where our conversations are global,
globally minded, and locally focused.
Check us out at www.ymcadallas.org/Causenetic.
And as always,
stay dynamic,
stay energized,
stay Causenetic.